So, welcome to the Feeling Fly podcast, where we speak to first-generation low-income college students about their experiences with the admissions process and the transition to colleges and universities across the nation. Today's episode is called The Performative Poor, College After Acceptance, and we will be speaking to...
Hi, my name is Mel Arthur. I'm a sophomore. My majors are psych and English, and I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much for being a very willing guest and friend, more importantly, on drawing from known sources. So anyways, as I said before, we are going to be discussing this idea of performativity whenever it comes to being first gen and low income. At particularly these so-called elite colleges and universities. For context, Mel and myself both attend Amherst College, and I don't know if you already said that you're a sophomore.
I am a sophomore.
Okay,
yes.
And I'm a junior, so this is not our first time at the rodeo.
No.
But yeah, I guess we can just start by talking about what it was like to get into Amherst College.
Yeah. I'm not sure where I should start. I think I would just start before the whole process. Looking for college things especially was difficult because I had to do it on my own. The first one to go to college, my parents were like, anytime I ask questions, they look at me and they're like, how are we supposed to know? And my brothers, of course, were no help because they were too young to be thinking about anything. And so it all fell on my shoulders. And I wasn't necessarily thinking about stuff you're supposed to be thinking about, like financial aid or location. I was just looking for places where I felt would fit me and what I like in my major. So that's what I looked at. I typed in Google psychology colleges and stuff like that. And then it wasn't till after I had a list. I had a list of 12 schools. 3 were some Ivies. 1 was Amherst, Brown. I have the list on my phone because it was important. But it was very, very interesting to me because I applied to University of Virginia as well, stuff like that. It was very, very interesting to me because afterwards, when I applied, then I started thinking about financial aid. And I became very freaked out, which is why I had to list on them on my phone, because I realized that me actually getting into these schools depended on how much money they gave me, how much money there was for me to even enter the schools. So I looked up all their financial aid policies after the fact. I was like, university, 100% need, but with loans. Swarthmore, no loans. Amherst College, no loans. Yay. Brown, no loans. Duke, loan-free if parents earn less than $40,000. So that was all my notes. And I was like, I need to get into one of these schools with no loans because we can't pay for that if there were loans or if there's any cost higher. So that was my sort of it was this smooth sailing happening, and I was really excited till it hit me that, wow, to get here, I need to do so much. I think that was my sort of process. And then afterwards, rejections were coming in, acceptances were coming in, and none of them were the schools that I needed for the no loans. So I was just okay, we'll come back to this. And then I remember at that Amherst thing came, and it was 6:21 they do, and I was shaking and screaming, and my mom was upstairs in bed and my brothers were in the living room, and I opened and it was congratulations. And this is the action that I did. I literally sat on the seat and I fell into the seat, and I had to calm down. So I went upstairs. The first thing I told my mom is, we don't have to pay. That was the first thing I told her. Not that I got in. I was like, Amherst, we don't have to pay. So that was the first thing. So that was my Amherst experience. I'm very curious as to what yours was. Were you looking for something specific or?
Yeah, no, first of all, I definitely appreciate you sharing all of that. As you were saying certain things, I felt a sense of resonance for myself because, the road to applying to college for me was very windy, I would say, because it was like I always knew. It seems like one thing that caught my attention in like you sharing was it seemed like there was this feeling amongst both of us, even whenever we weren't sure what the financial situation would look like. It's almost as if college wasn't necessarily negotiable. Like for me, all throughout, it was like one thing that I couldn't really understand was, or that I never really thought about, I guess, was that college was always sold to me as like a way out. So it was like I always knew that I needed to go to college. Like everyone always told me that I should, and it wasn't just because, I mean, you know, I hate to say it, I guess now, me being like macho liberal arts student, you know, stereotype or whatever, but it's true. I wasn't always thinking like, oh, I want to go to some place where I can sit in a room and think for 4 years. It wasn't always like that. It was more like college always held sort of like a symbolic meaning or value for me, which was like, I didn't know exactly what it was. I couldn't put it in super concrete terms, but it just felt like a way out, you know? And so for me, I was fortunate to find out what Questbridge was from this other guy that it was literally such a chance encounter. Like, he was someone that had just moved to the school district like a year and a half before. And most of the people, I'm from a pretty small town, so most people where I'm from, they just go into like whatever business their family has, or they go to like the community college. And there's nothing wrong with that, obviously, but I knew that I wanted to kind of, I don't know, I knew that my chances of success or like upward mobility, of course I wasn't thinking of it in those terms then, but like later on, that's what you call it, upward mobility. I was thinking like my upward mobility would be secured. I would be able to get my family out of their situation only by really leaving them. That's sort of how it was sold to me. So found out about Questbridge. I was introduced to this whole concept of a liberal arts college, and I kind of liked it, you know, like, ooh, a small campus, everyone gets to take whatever they want because it's an open curriculum. All these things felt so like fancy and shiny and new. And so for me, like, whenever I found out that I got into Amherst, it was similar to your experience, like in terms of it wasn't so much that it was Amherst. I mean, that was a good plus because I was like, ideally I would like to enjoy the place that I'm going to be for the next 4 years. But more so than that, it was like I found out that I matched to Amherst, so I knew once I matched that I wouldn't have to pay anything out of pocket. And so whenever I found that out, I told my mom, and my mom thought, well, first my grandma and my mom, both really big, like significant figures in my life. My grandma thought I was upset. She was like, oh, are you sad because you didn't get into an Ivy League? And I was like, I was like, no. I was like, Amherst is a good school, but I feel like they don't even understand because they were also in a place where, I mean, nobody's sitting around talking about the usefulness of the liberal arts, you know? Like, that's not a thing that's happening. They know, like, the Ivy League, and, like, that's pretty much it. So she thought I was upset. And then my mom, she understood a little bit more from our conversations what it really meant to get into Amherst. And she got really sad. She went to her room and she like didn't come out for like a few hours. I think I didn't really talk to her until the next morning because she told me, she was like, I am happy for you, but I'm gonna miss you. And I don't know. I guess I would ask if you sort of had a similar experience in terms of what college meant to you.
Yeah, when you were talking, I wrote down notes because it's true. It was like, it was going to be this way out. It was going to be, I'm going to be the first person to do this, make the pathway. So my brothers especially can follow me along on this journey. And I can do more than my parents ever did with their sense of education. So it was this like sense of like this, for me too, it was like, I'm moving on, I'm moving forward. It wasn't a doubt in my mind that I was going to go to college. It was just like, where am I going to go? And hopefully not in Virginia because I didn't want to stay there. So I definitely do agree that it was to me like this way out. You said it was like sold to you as this way out. And I think most definitely in the town that I was, it was this way out. Because a lot of people go to like UVA or what's James Madison in Virginia. And I was like, that's not my way out. I need to go somewhere else. And this sense of upward mobility was also the thing that came into play. And yeah, I think Amherst too, when I got it, was this fancy, shiny new thing. I didn't know what any of it meant. Like, what does open curriculum mean? Or like, you get to like have close relationship with your professors. Again, all of these like perks and stuff were knowledge to me after I had applied. So it wasn't anything I ever knew before or was ever exposed to. And it's so interesting you mentioned like Questbridge as this like, it just happened. Like, imagine if it didn't. That would be, I didn't know about Questbridge till I got here as well. So that's very interesting to me.
Yeah. That's sort of another thing that I was going to ask you about. In terms of the resources that exist for first-gen low-income students as they're applying to college, were there any of those resources that you used to your advantage?
When you talk about resources, what do you mean?
So things like community-based organizations. So for me, for instance, I know that I had someone I had like a student, a current college student, who went to Colorado College maybe. Okay. And he would like check in on me like monthly because I applied to this program that I didn't even understand what it was. I just knew that they gave help to like prospective college students who came from low-income backgrounds. And so he would check in with me, and I mean, it was really great because he would like give me feedback on my like essays and things like that. He would like send me like a list of scholarship opportunities like on a monthly basis. And I don't remember the name of the program, but it was really helpful for me. And then of course, like I said, Questbridge, I was able to go to an admissions conference, the National College Admissions Conference, I think it's called, at Vanderbilt University, because it happens to be within driving distance of where I live. So I was able to go there and meet with all these like admissions officers. I got so nervous in front of like the Columbia representative because at the time that was like my top choice. I got so nervous. Like, she literally saw me and she's like, breathe. But like, as you were saying, I think literally a year before I met this guy who told me about Questbridge. I was content with going to a state school, even though it was like the furthest thing from what I wanted, because I was like, at the end of the day, what I want more than anything is this opportunity, even though I didn't understand the ins and outs of that opportunity. So in terms of the resources that exist for first generation low-income students, I guess I would ask, did you have any that helped you in your like process to get to Amherst? And also, how do you feel about the level of publicity of programs like that?
I think for me, either I just didn't go looking for it, or I didn't know those sorts of things existed, and the situation I was in sort of begged for me to do it all on my own. Those three came into combination to make that there wasn't any sort of resources for me. There wasn't anything that I looked for. I talked to my school counselor a lot, and all he could offer me was just like, go online, look it up, and like if you need any help with things. Or he found like a local scholarship, because everything in my school was geared towards the local. Like they had like admissions people come, but it was the local schools. I wasn't looking for that. He didn't even know what Amherst was, my counselor. So a lot of these things I had to go look for on my own, do on my own. I wasn't thinking, I wasn't in the mindset of maybe there's something out there for people like me. My mindset was like, okay, now I'm here, I need to figure it out on my own. So I'm sure there is some out there, but in my context, none in my immediate vicinity that I could turn to and look to. Like that, the one you mentioned about the college students checking on you, that's so cool. Like looking over your applications and stuff. I just had my friends look over it. I was just like, okay, essay for Brown done, can you look over it for me? Or I did it myself by like writing it and then not looking over it for months. I had like a whole tracker of I applied here. I had for like a whole note thing with like my essay recepts that I kept reusing, because I was like, I can't rewrite a new one every time. So there wasn't any resources. And I think in terms of publicizing them, it just also depends on where you are from and what they value around you. Because outside college was not a value thing around me. And so, of course, they were not going to provide something for broader. What do I want to do? The most out-of-state thing was like UVA out-of-state. What can those people do? So it was like, even if it existed, I didn't know about it. And I wish there was like an opportunity, a chance to know about it. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the piece about context hits for me a lot, because even that program I was talking about where I checked in with this college student, that was an opportunity that I did seek out for myself. It was, like I said, I was very lucky to find someone who knew what Questbridge was and was able to explain it to me. It was like one in every single body in the county.
Crazy.
And so I guess with that in mind, I would also ask, was it like the like specific friend group you were with, were y'all like all interested in the same things in terms of the types of colleges you were applying to, or if college was even like an end goal for them as well? And if so, do you think that sort of like maybe influenced your I guess really just like your admissions process with applying to Amherst?
That's interesting, because I had like two specific friends that I was referring to, like talking about. Like my friend Jo, she was already out of Virginia. She did this like performing arts program in North Carolina, so she really wasn't going to like come back again. She left in like 11th grade, 12th. Her whole 12th
I know what you're talking about.
So it was like she was looking at big schools. Her top was like Northwestern. I almost applied to Northwestern because like it would be nice to go to school together. No, I'm glad we're in separate places. That would be an interesting sort of thing. And the friend Allison, she I think stayed and did state school. I didn't really keep up with her. Like I ended up being more friends with Jo, so I'll focus on Jo more. So just like the wanting to get out, wanting to get away was already present with Jo, and it was just like, oh, that's interesting. I didn't know, and she made it happen, like applying outside elsewhere, and I didn't know that was a thing. I think she only applied to Northwestern actually, ED, because you were so sure that she would get in, and I was like, I want to also do that, though I can't apply ED. I want to apply elsewhere and have that chance to go like out of here. So she most definitely like influenced me because she made it seem possible that you can like leave. So yeah, did you have any friends like that?
I think really just like I said, the guy that I told you about. The thing is, I've talked to a lot of people about this, and it's always so interesting to me the way that like first gen low income students specifically tell their stories of getting to Amherst, because it always seems like whenever you sort of like dig up the past, there's like one example or model that you're like, oh, this was like it's like you already had those ideas there, but there's always something that it seems like this was the thing that set it in motion. So that's why I asked you about that, because I don't know if I found a person yet who was just like, oh yeah, I knew from the time I was in diapers that I wanted to go to Amherst College.
There's some people out there like that, and it's so crazy to me, because I just found Amherst on a list, and I was like, that's cool. I'm applying to you. It was better than American College, which followed from it.
I see. Yeah, so it's always interesting to me because, again, like going back to me asking about publicity, like even now my brother, he's in the process of applying to college. This is his senior year of high school, and there are things that he's just not asking me because he doesn't even, because first of all, I did it all myself, and it's not as if I was narrating the whole process as I was doing it, but then it's like he doesn't even know where to begin. There are things that he's just convinced himself he's not able to do, like the opportunity doesn't exist, and so much of that isn't because, I mean, it's not because he's not motivated, it's not because he doesn't want it, it's because, like me, it's like it's gonna come down to even knowing some of those opportunities are out there, and it seems like he just doesn't. Like he was talking about like getting financial aid, like getting scholarships from like UNCG, I think, because that's his top choice, and he just like completely missed the deadline for applying to the honors college because he just sort of like convinced himself that he wouldn't be able to get in.
Oh, no.
And so I know, but the thing is, he didn't say it to me like, oh yeah, I've just given up or anything.
No,
it was just, it was almost like this was a reality that he had accepted, as if he's been, you know, like acknowledging it in little ways in different areas up to this point. And so that's why it's just like really interesting to me, because here at Amherst, you sort of have this, sometimes I have this sense of guilt in terms of being here, because I know that I do also occupy a sort of like privileged position, but it's also like, I don't know if I ever quite feel like I belong here, because I know that so much of it for me was like, it's not as if I don't deserve to be here. It's just I don't always feel like I belong here, because it almost seems like there's a system that's like rigged a certain way, and so unless you like hit these specific variables, you will not get in if you come from like a specific background. But I don't know if that resonates for you, or if you have other thoughts on that.
I think for like, firstly, your brother, that's so interesting. The like already taking in reality that this is not going to happen for me, so I shouldn't do it. I hope he has you there to like, no, let's do it again. Let's go a different pathway. Hopefully, because it's true. It's not like you're narrating like, and then you go to, what's the thing? It's not called a common. It's like the C thing.
What? The
like,
common application?
Yes, it is called the common application.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like,
you're
what?
right. Don't lie yourself.
I was thinking about the lit mag, the common. You see,
common.
My brain.
Amherst has corrupted us.
It's worked. Oh, I forgot where it came from. God, that common application ruined me. Anyways, I wasn't saying, the common application, blah, blah, blah. And it's so weird, too, having siblings, because my brother is in 9th grade and he's already thinking about college. I'm like, please don't do this right now. I know where he wants to go to. I can help him with that when it comes to it, but don't do that to yourself right now. But I definitely agree with you. The sense of belonging always feels like a misalignment, like a puzzle piece that just doesn't fit fully, because there's just like certain ways that when you're here, you're supposed to be here and take up space, knowing that you have this sort of privilege now that they have risen you up to this quote unquote elite status that's supposed to propel you forward for the rest of your life, which certain circumstances that's not going to happen, because there's a certain difference level of privilege in the school. Like those at the very, 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 very top are the ones going to get everything. So I definitely agree with you that the system is sort of shifted a certain way, that the bodies in here that don't fit it, regardless of where we are now, it's just not going to work. It's just not going to do well. And it's so, anytime I hear people talking about not belonging, I think about that like campaign, Amherst, #Amherst I belong. It hangs in like the Converse, and I see it somewhere, and I'm like, why did you do that? I'm curious as to the background of that campaign, because it probably came from a response to students being like, I don't feel like I belong here. And even then, the pictures are beautiful, and the people telling their stories about like finding friends and finding ways that they belong. Those are very nice, because you can have those things and also realize that in some ways it's just never going to fit, but maybe you're making it fit in your own way. Just aside from what the institution wants you to fit. Because there's a certain mold. You come here, you're supposed to do the thing, speak in the liberal arts way, discursive, blah, 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 blah. And also go in one pathway too. They have an issue with your whole consulting and finance and like those fields that are not meant for people of color that they push you into. So like shifting away from that and like doing different things helps. Like, I'm so curious as to like what specific things in the Amherst sort of community you feel are like a certain way for like a certain people, or that like contribute to this like not fitting and not belonging, at least to you and your perspective.
Right. So this is actually like kind of like the whole big point. Like this is what we've been working up to in terms of what I really wanted to dive into in this episode. So I'm glad that you brought us there because, you know, we started out with me saying the title, like, oh, we're talking about the performative poor. And then you just kind of hit on this point of like, I don't know, sort of always feeling like you have to occupy space in a certain way, or like there's a space that's been carved out for you and that's the only space you're allowed to take up. So that really resonated for me. And so for me, I think there's like really two things I think about. The first is my admissions essay, which I guess isn't college after acceptance technically speaking, but it kind of is because so much of my getting into Amherst, I think, sort of started with me occupying a certain space. Whenever I wrote my college admissions essay, I sort of like, I mean, I guess I can say this now because my mom already knows it, but I spoke pretty disparagingly of my family. I mean, I kind of spoke about my home as being very broken. And I talked about hardship. I mean, it's not as if we haven't faced hardship. Like, you know, we're here recording this podcast. We know we know what it means to be first-gen low income. So, like, of course, like, there were things that we didn't always have. We weren't rich, but at the same time, it's like I've experienced so many other things from my family from that's like not rooted in hardship. There's like a big communal element between me and my family of just like closeness that I think a lot of people here don't have. A lot of people I think I've noticed don't know how to be in community. And so for me, I think that's a real strength, but that's not what I wrote about in my essay. It was as if I knew that there was something being asked of me. There's this thing for Questbridge applicants. I didn't see it at the time, so I'm not gonna lie and pretend like I did. I saw it after I became interested in this issue. It's like this guide called Tips. It's called Tips for Writing the Essay, and it's called The Low Income Advantage. And so they list all these things out, and it's like, tell your story. And so it's like, tell a story of hardship, of overcoming hardship. Tell a story of immigration. Tell a story of abuse. Like, and I remember reading that, and I was like, okay, what are you saying? Because it's like, you're not really asking me to tell my story. You're asking me to tell a story that you've already written for me. And so the thing is, I bought into that. Like, whenever, and I kind of knew as I was writing it because I didn't feel comfortable showing my mom. So anyone who knows me knows that my mom is my best friend. I tell her literally everything. There's nothing that woman doesn't know about me. But this was the one thing that I was like, I don't know if she'll take this well, because it was about an experience that was pretty personal for both of us, something we were still working through at the time, but and it was related to mental illness. But the thing is, I told the story a certain way, as if it was like, oh, because like my family wasn't understanding of my like mental illness, I began to write poetry. That was the place I felt safest, and I think that I can contribute to the Amherst College campus environment because I have a unique voice and a unique perspective based out of this experience, and my poetry is the only place that I really feel seen. And so I kind of played to this like traditionally intellectual edge. I knew that I needed to write about how my smarts would help me contribute to the environment here, but I also kind of played on my marginality a lot in terms of saying like, you know, I think that this was a situation that may not have gone this way for like my white peers. I think that it was related to, you know, us being a family of strong Black women, and my family saying, having this sort of existing conception that like Black people don't deal with mental illness. But what I didn't say in that essay was that, you know, no matter how long it took her to come around, my mom did eventually come to me with open arms, and she said, you know, I'm so sorry. It's just that this was something I didn't know how to protect you from. I thought, what's it like if she's like, who taught her to feel comfortable saying this? Because the first person who overhears it that has white skin is going to take advantage of it. And so that's not a story that I told in my admissions essay. It's a story that I have and that I know that it happened. And like I said, me and my mom had talked about this, worked through it, and so much of it is related to, I don't know, it's like sometimes I feel like I have to talk about my hardship as if it's this thing that I must independently, individually overcome. And in so writing about it, it sort of feels like that hardship is something we participate in, or like the people that we're leaving now, us being here at Amherst, that those people are participating in, and that they're reproducing by what? Not being at Amherst, as if that's something that they could do right now. So I don't know, like it's just, I would say that that's really one of the things that for me, I think, you know, like I said, I was so excited when I got into Amherst, but there was a part of me that knew as I was writing that essay, I kind of knew two things. I kind of knew, first of all, that it would get me in.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I knew was that I wasn't myself. And so it's almost like I started off on unequal footing. I started off by being sort of a caricature of myself. And I think I told myself that it was okay, because once I got my foot in the door, I could take up as much space as I wanted to. I just, you know, I had to play by the rules for this time, but it shouldn't have been like that in the first place. I don't know, what was your experience like whenever you sort of wrote your essay to get in?
It's so interesting because in the essay topics they give you, they have one literally built around hardship. It's like they're feeding you. They're like, here, we know you have something to say. For me, like before I talk about my essays, like you write the story that they want to hear, that you know that they want to hear, that reads you as a subject that has gone through so much, but you've overcome, and you're like this phoenix rising from the ashes. And it's like they already have these prescribed notions about what your story is going to be. And so if you feed into that, if you do the checklist, like, okay, went through this, but I got through it. Now I'm here because I went through this, because I'm this, because I'm that. And then when they let you in, they're like, look at us. We did it. We brought you here. We're contributing to you being a better individual. You getting over your hardship. You doing this is because now you're here. This is something like I wrote a whole essay about this for my writing a college experience class. Just thinking about like the stories and like the, what's it called? Just like, where is it? The whole Anthony Jack thing. The single story narrative. Just like having this one narrative of hardship that that you like sort of say, like, I've worked through all these barriers that surround me and I'm here. And the college then uses it, so then people who can't do that, or people who tell a story in a different way, don't get in, because it's just like, you're not like these people. That's a whole other conversation. But for my essay, what did I do? I picked the hardship one because I was like, that's the one I could speak to. You know, I could have spoken to the other ones well enough, but I was like, there's something here. Maybe it was the pull of like, okay, this is what they want to hear. I wrote my essay about coming here from Ghana, struggling with language, struggling with like math, because I wasn't on the same level as my peers, like coming from a different education system. I wrote about how, this is a line I always remember and I cringe every time. It was like, difficulty was like a vendor on every street corner. God, I'm sure they ate that up. They were like, ooh. Yeah, so it was just like, what was that one essay? Like, difficulty need not blah, blah, blah. The Supreme Court justice. Like, yeah. Anyway, so that's what I wrote about. And then in that writing, I didn't talk about how hard it was for me. I didn't talk about community. I talked about me. I was like, this is how I went through it. I studied, I practiced, I did this. And this shows that I'm able to overcome and come to Amherst to do the same thing. Because obviously I did already. And because I come from this background and no one supported me, my family was there for me the whole entire time. I can do this on my own. And you know, like my little joke about the phoenix, I literally used the phoenix. Like my essay ending was like the phoenix rising from the ashes. I was so corny in that essay. It was bad. But they liked it apparently. And I can't look at that essay anymore. I really don't like it. But I did the same thing. Just put myself on display, put the story that they wanted to hear out there with no community, with no backing, with no fullness to the story. Because that's not what they want to hear. They don't want to hear that you had these people help you. You're supposed to do it all by yourself. And once you come here, you're going to do it all by yourself. It's like the expectation anyways.
Yeah.
And it's like these invisible rules as to how you're supposed to offer yourself up to them. You're supposed to package yourself as this one thing and one thing only, even though they talk about you have to be well-rounded. There's only a certain type of well-roundedness that they want from you. And like the quest bridge thing, it's like, it's really sick and twisted how they have that as a list. But it's true. They're also playing to, we're working within this system that won't let us in unless we work within it. And it's just continuing on and on.
It's difficult. It's tough. I mean, I appreciate that you brought up Anthony Jack, because that's like the play on words here with our episode.
Poor, privileged poor, I caught it.
Yeah, you just knew where I was going. Something about Amherst. But yeah, I mean, there's like this New York Times article where Anthony Jack says classes weren't the hard part. And I just think that's so interesting in our conversation about like occupying space. Too, right? He was here. Amherst alum. And so, I mean, our conversation's making me think of so many things just because this is sort of like a field of study for me. But there's so many examples. There's the story of like, what's her name? Mackenzie. You know what I'm talking about? Mackenzie Fierceton, I think. She went to UPenn and Mackenzie Fierceton. So the story about Mackenzie Fierceton is like UPenn sort of like accused her of lying about her sort of like background as being from hardship because details came forward from another parent that was involved in this situation. Revealing like a certain income or something like that, I think. And so it seemed to discount her story as if she was making it up. But the point of this is there's always this sort of expectation of like how dimensional we get to be. And so it's like whenever you're talking about just like, I don't know, almost like the exploitative nature. You said, I think, putting yourself on display. And that's something that I feel like we're constantly being asked to do even from the moment that we are writing these admissions essays, because for instance, this student, like, her entire degree was put on hold, I believe. And then she just kind of basically had to explain that the situation was a bit more complicated and that you can't trust just because one person says that I didn't suffer abuse, that I didn't, you know? And so, you know, that's something that I guess we get into later in the in this episode or another one. But that's just one example to me of, like, this sort of performativity, that element of performativity. And so I guess just drawing it back to our conversation about Amherst specifically and our experience here, what are those sort of invisible rules that you've been mentioning? Where are some places that you have encountered them, whether it be like in the behavior, attitudes of students or professors, or even in some of the programs and policies in place on campus? Are there any of those that come to mind in our conversation?
While I'm gathering my thoughts, I want to turn the question back to you. I want you to answer because my brain is scattered.
No, I have to write it down. It's not fair. I had time to think about these questions, right?
Yes, okay. You answer.
I would say for me, there's a lot of places. I think one thing is in terms of sort of like this idea of emergencies on campus. So like the emergency fund, for instance, is put in place, and it's so interesting because it's like, didn't you sort of let me in? I mean, you may not have just let me in because I'm poor, but it certainly felt like it when I was writing my essay. And that definitely played some part in it. I mean, even going back to this example I just brought up of Mackenzie Fierceton, it's like income and like oppression Olympics and like level of hardship, it does come into play during the college admissions process, especially now as the SAT and ACT are being devalued. Other parts of the application naturally have to become a little bit more significant in deeming applicants college ready. And so for me, it's like, okay, so here I come. I'm like outside the doors of Amherst as if it's like one building. I'm outside the doors of Amherst. I got all my baggage. I got just like, based on my essay, I mean, I'm taking up the whole street with baggage. And then I open the doors. Let's say Converse. That's like one of the first places I saw when I got here. Yeah, it's like the first thing you see. Yeah. And so I'm standing outside the steps of Converse, and then I realize like the door's not big enough for all my baggage. No. So then I pick up just a couple suitcases, try to go through the door. Boop! I get stopped at every turn. Yeah. I have to leave it all there. Yeah. I'm able to get through only whenever I've dropped all of it. And so once I get through those doors and I come here, it's like there's times whenever it's expected of me to say I'm a first generation low income student, and there's times whenever I'm sort of asked to put that away because this is an inappropriate situation for it. Yeah. And like I said, one of those examples is even just emergency funding. Like, hello, I'm poor. Like sometimes there's emergencies at home in terms of like whatever the case may be. Really, I remember my first semester here, that first like J term. Yeah. I had a car accident and I asked them for funds for like car related expenses because I wrecked my car. Yeah. And I remember them saying, like, writing back to me like, this needs to be an education related expense. Why are you calling it an emergency fund if it has to be education related? And I get it. It could be like for tax reasons or anything, but don't dress it up as something as like one thing and then it's another entirely. And so for me it's like there are real explicit places on campus where whatever the case may be, it's like my poorness isn't welcome here. I mean, I had a conversation once with a professor who I was just making jokes. I was talking about, I can't even remember what it was. I said something along the lines of like, oh, like, don't show them that I got this package from the post office. They might rescind my admission, And she got so offended. She was like... she was like, how could you say that? And I was like, excuse me? I was like, and then all the other people in the room, I'm going to go ahead and say, all of whom are not first-gen low income, are just kind of looking at me with like these like dead eyes, like like I'm speaking a different language, And it's like, okay, so let me get this straight. You're welcoming and inviting for me to talk about my income status whenever it somehow contributes to what your diversification of the mind or your diversification of the campus. Like those things are fine, but whenever I want to bring it up on my terms and tell it as a story of like not only hardship but also almost like something that I exploited to gain admission here, I'm not allowed to say it anymore. You can't say that. Like, that's crazy. I should be allowed to say what I want.
We can use that, but you can't.
Exactly. And so those are just two examples for me that come up. I hope you have some time to collect.
Thank you for tossing it back to me. It is so funny, like, the fact that they could use it and, like, metaphorically plaster you on like the little diversity photos, but you can use that. You can be like, ha ha ha, I know exactly what you're doing. I think for me, I was trying to think of specific examples, but maybe I'll think of it as I'm talking. But I'm thinking about what the invisible rules are. I sort of take issue with how things are unexplained, unaddressed in terms of the resources that they say they have. So like the CARC is a thing that I didn't know. Office hours is always one that comes up. Like you can go to your professors, talk to them. Work, study, and financial stuff, that's a big thing. Like you can talk to the financial aid office. That's not So I take issue with how things like that are just like they're there and they say that they're there. And it's not like, God, it's so hard for me to do the work to go look for them. But coming here without those things, without access to those things, without knowing how those things work, and without knowing if I'm allowed to take up space and redefine those things to fit me, how am I supposed to approach that? How am I supposed to reach that? Like, that's focusing on like the financial aid and stuff. Like emergency funds, I knew it was a thing first year. But I was like, if I take emergency funds, how would this affect my financial aid? Right. I don't know anything about that. I worry about my work study all the time because I'm like, if I go above it, what are they going to do.
Yeah.
Can I ask you that? You don't offer me that information. I have to go seek it out to you. And if I don't ask it the right way, you're not going to give me what I need.
Yeah.
It's the thing as well. So stuff like that is just like, you say you have all of those things, but you don't. I'm not asking you for like a line by line, and then you email the financial aid office and stuff. But make it accessible.
Yeah.
Don't make it something that's like so high up a tower that I have to trudge my way there, suffering before I finally get the answers there.
Yeah.
I love the CARC, but I didn't know the CARC offered all of these things. Though now I am like in it, I know. But if you just come here, you may never like go to the CARC. They talk about it in like admissions tours. I hear them all the time, like in the Class Access Resource Center. They don't tell you that when you're applying. They tell you that when they need to tell you that. So it's like,
and who's really on those tours?
yeah,
Not,
really on those tours.
not the students who need the CARC the most.
No, and it's like we have this resource center. Wow, we can brag about it. And stuff like that. It also comes down to just like, oh, there was something I was gonna say. It just slipped my mind. Okay, yeah, but stuff like that. It just like, I take issue to a lot of those things, like small things like office hours. You know what I also take issue with?
What?
Not having that like opportunity prior, the summer bridge thing. Not everyone got an opportunity for summer bridge to come here, learn how to talk to professors, learn how to be in Amherst as this fly student. And it always gets me because I'm like, how did you make that choice? Who specifically are allowed to do that? And why wasn't this an open... Was it an open thing? Could you apply to it? I didn't know all of those things. Again, I still don't know.
I don't think that I applied to summer bridge.
You can apply to it?
No, I don't think you can.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that they literally just pick and choose.
Yeah. So it's just like my roommate and I talk about it all the time, like this joking thing, like, wow, you want us here, but you only selected a few people. Yeah. And they build your community. And so you come here, you're already outside of that from what they know. It's like...
Yeah.
Tomato. I'm still bitter about that.
It's okay if it makes you feel better. I take issue with some of the basic principles of summer bridge because I mean it still comes at a point of like I agree that summer bridge has been helpful in at least connecting me with other students who identify as first gen and low income. I don't know where I would be in terms of my like time at Amherst without that. At the same time, is it enough to put all the poor kids in a room and let everyone know that you're all poor kids? I don't know if it is. I think the most useful thing I got out of that concretely was knowing what the writing center was. But in terms of other stuff, like the longevity of it, in terms of like, is this a resource that I'll tap into? No, I think if I emailed Austin Sarah right now, he wouldn't remember who I was.
No. He was part of that?
Yeah, he's the main person.
Really?
Yeah, and so it's like that man does not know.
You're doing it for the right reason.
The other thing is, I feel like some of the faculty have certain existing assumptions about what you do and don't have access to, and sometimes they can speak in a way that's condescending. It was most of the time the people who came from similar backgrounds, like people who also identified as first gen low income before they became tenured professors at Amherst. It was mostly those people who were able to speak to me in a way in which sometimes I sort of have told people about this before. It feels like, I mean, this is gonna be hard because we're on a podcast, so I can't do my little visual thing. But if you have people who talk to you from a certain place as if they're like preaching down to you rather than like taking the elevator to the first floor and y'all chatting down there. It's always this sort of like hierarchy and professors sometimes speak. I get it, like you worked hard to get your education, like you worked hard for that PhD. I'm never going to question you for it. At the same time, what good is it for you to keep throwing that in my face as someone who doesn't even have a conception of what a PhD is? I didn't even understand there was a difference between undergrad and grad school before I got here. I was like, I have to do this again?
Me too, that's what I said. And like when I came to the Mellon and you guys are like, yeah, you can also just get your master's and a PhD. I was like, what? That's a thing?
Yeah. No, literally same. I was like, no, not again.
No way. You can't force me.
I mean, it just doesn't make sense to me to be so protective and like exclusionary. I think because so much of it is just like, look at me who has something that you don't have. Calm down. You get paid to do this.
You're not here to fight for the space that you made yourself.
Exactly.
It is like the Olympics, like.
Yeah, I just feel like so many of the faculty who were involved in that program, a lot of them, like I said, I'm super grateful for, but some of them, and this goes for even extending beyond summer bridge, a lot of them, they learned this fact about you, that you come from this specific background, and they already, like we said before, have this image in mind of the mold that you fit and the sort of student that you are. And I mean, I've had lots of white professors, for instance, who are just like, and if you ever need time off for like, I don't know, a racial mental health related, like, you don't even know what you're saying. Stop throwing things in there,
Just the buzzwords.
Like, please, I need, and it's like, the thing is, it's hard because I know that it comes from a good place. And like I said, there are worse issues. It could be that I was at a place where these issues weren't understood at all, but I think it's still harmful for these things to be misunderstood or misrepresented. And it's difficult for me. I mean, like I said, I've had a lot of white professors in my days at Amherst, and they're not always understanding. Sometimes they think that they're doing good, and they're really, really not. They're really embarrassing themselves. I've had, once I made a professor cry because I took time off for like a race. It was for a Black Minds Matter walkout. I guess this is what she was referring to when she was talking about race-related mental health days. But this was something that I needed to do, like my community was suffering, and so I just told her, I won't be in your class today. She said she understood. So whenever I came to the office hours and asked her questions about the lecture, she said, if you wanted to hear the lecture, you should have come to class. And I just kind of got upset because it seemed like she was already making me out to be a certain type of student, despite what she has sworn she wouldn't do. Like, she swore she was going to be understanding. And then I kind of told her that in so many words. And I wasn't even mean to her, I was just like, I kind of don't understand because it feels like I'm still being punished for something that I told you I need to do. It's not really negotiable for me. Then she started crying, and this like a 3-hour Zoom session ensued. I know. And so it's just, it's always like that, it's always like, God forbid you like show yourself in a way that's not convenient for someone else here who's in a position of relative power. And those are the sorts of experiences that I've had here that make it so hard sometimes to be an Amherst student, because it's like, my God, you're just not thinking. That's what I was talking about, the performative element. So
a lot of professors here, I've had like 2 sort of weird professor interactions that it's just like, why are you like this? And it didn't have to do with like fly stuff. It mainly concerned race. Like, I've been in 2 classes now that white professors feel okay to say the N-word in like poetry. 2 classes. That's a lot.
That's crazy.
And that was just like, went to like the chair of the department, and he was talking about getting rid of old Amherst, and I was like, this is old Amherst that you guys, I said Amherst wrong, that you guys are doing this in. It's such an isolating thing. And a lot of things, like, especially for like black fly people, it's an after the fact sort of care that happens, or after things happen that people are like, okay, we need to change this, while feeling comfortable and knowing. And then even though moving to that care is only in the buzzword sort of things that impact them, it's trying to do the whole like restorative justice. Let's go back to something that never ever existed, and so you lose sort of the footing of that. So I hope I don't have any more experiences like you were saying with those professors. That I couldn't handle it. Like, once the tears start, it's just like, now I have to tell you it's okay. Stop crying.
It was a lot, and I feel like that's just. And then I always end up thinking to myself at the end of the day, like, that's just Amherst, And it's hard because, like you said, there's all these little it's like these invisible traps are set. And I feel like I'll be spending every single day, all day, walking over them things and getting caught in them. It's when I least expect it. Like, I had another professor that was upset because I didn't print like 10 pages for class. And I mean, I emailed it to her right before class because I have things to do. Like, I'm not the typical Amherst student, and I don't ever want to use that in a way that's like, oh, look at me, you should make exceptions all the time, you know? But I mean, I don't know. I think at the same time, it's like, yeah, I'm working 40 hours a week, and I'm also trying to take care of myself. So if I have work in the morning and then therapy right after, and then a 9 o'clock class, it may be the case that I might not have 10 pages printed if the printer wasn't working the night before. Like, it's not like I have a printer in my room, you know. I do have to utilize the public printing on campus. And so it's like, but people just are so quick to not act with empathy. It's like, weren't you just feeling so sorry for me 5 seconds ago whenever you were telling the whole class about how I'm like first gen and low income and look at me, the model student? Like, where did that sort of understanding go? It flew out the window whenever I started like sort of almost like negotiating my identity on my own terms in this space. And so it's like, yes, Amherst has done a lot of good, but Amherst still has a long way to go in terms of all of this stuff, because it's very little things that you see that happen. Like these things I've mentioned here, like it's always little stuff. It's even interactions with peers. Like I said, like I get it. It's not everyone here is working full time. And but at the same time, like I see your looks that you give me whenever I don't hand you your coffee in under 60 seconds. Like that's not going, you know, nowhere. Like, and I don't know. There's so much stuff that I feel like I've dealt with on this campus, even a lot of times in terms of just the hours that I'm working. Like you said something really important earlier about just wanting like an increase in accessibility for a lot of stuff. Like financial aid should be, I don't know why they're so protective of like the appeals process. Like they could argue that like, oh well, not that many students go through it, but I've heard a lot of students who have to appeal financial aid. So it's like, why are you protecting this? Like it's something that you intentionally don't want people to understand. Just put a guide out that says, hi, here's how you like petition financial aid. And so, because for me, it's like, I'm in a place where it's affecting me financially in a big way. So why do you assume that I'm going to be able to find time in my schedule to do all this work and research of it myself whenever I shouldn't have been put in this position in the first place? And so I just got exhausted this semester. That's when I started working full time instead of appealing financial aid, because I was like, the other thing is, that sort of invisible lines you're talking about, it's hard for me to find people at Amherst who I don't have to explain things to. It's hard for me to find people who... Okay, so I remember this one... Sorry, I know I'm going a little bit all over the place, but I remember this one class I had. The professor asked people to raise their hand if they had worked in a food service or food industry job. Me and one other student raised our hands. And this was like a 20 people class. I was like, out of 20 of us, only 2 of us have worked in food service. I get it. Like, that's not the marker for the low income experience, but I was still surprised because where I come from, everyone starts in food service. That's like, everyone starts by working at McDonald's and then you work your way up the ladder. And so for me, it was hard to understand because I had been a manager at Domino's previously. And so whenever I got here, it was like, that's a little awkward. And I get it. Like I said, not everyone has to have the exact same experiences as me, but it was hard to talk to people who had never understood this. Like, I'm not saying that people here don't have a work ethic, because clearly, I mean, like, you did have to get here, right? But there's more to like having a work ethic than sitting in a room writing papers all day long. And once you do that for a while, I think sometimes you can start to like almost disprivilege or disvalue the like physical labor of other people who keep the whole world running. Like my mom, who works in a hospital, she's not like a nurse. She works in the kitchen of the hospital, but she works long hours, and she works long, hard hours. And my entire life, she's been my role model. And so for me coming here, it was like, I did want to stay true to that, which is part of the reason I went into dining. It was something that I knew that I would be good at. It was also some piece that I didn't want to lose, because it was like, that's the only place on campus that I knew for a fact that people would share this experience with me. And so those people, like my coworkers, I'm thinking of 3 of them right now who is like, that's my group. Like that's my like home away from home. Like I've formed connections with them greater than the connections I've formed with people like who are students here. You know, people my age, like people who, like, we're supposed to be in this together, and somehow I have more in common with these full-time employees than I do with some of the student body, because it's like I never have to explain things to them, you know. And of course, even that, it's like layers of privilege, because of course I hold these dual identities as both student and worker. There are things relating to their experience that I don't understand, but there are also things that we share in that's like common for us. And so whenever it comes down to it, it's like, am I going to stress myself out appealing to financial aid, or just make the money the way I've always done my entire life with the one group of people that I actually feel like sees me? Because no matter what, at the end of the day, I know like, similar backgrounds. There's stuff that I just don't have to explain. I remember I was even I had a shift at Frost Cafe earlier. I was talking to someone, and we were making this joke, and at first I was like, I probably shouldn't have said that. But then he was like, are you kidding me? Look at me, I'm here. I'm poor. I know what it means to be poor. You can say that to me. Then we just start laughing about it, you know? And so, I mean, I don't know. It's like, it's just so complicated. Just the entire experience of being here, because, like I said, there's a lot of good. But I also, do I have to say that every time? You know? Can I just be allowed... I feel like I'm always justifying things. Can I just be allowed to be unhappy here with some of the way that things are handled? So those are some of the experiences that I've had here that I'm just like, make it easier. Why is it so hard? You know?
Just a big sigh.
I just went off because I just like, it brought so much up for me. Like, it just brought so many things. I wasn't trying to like dominate, I swear. No, I just had like this full arsenal of stuff that I totally forgot.
Listen to. I was nodding along, sprinkling my writing down my notes, because it's true. I think especially like finding, like, you have to navigate yourself, or at least I feel this way, in terms of like how much you work, or how much you do jobs. Like this semester, more so than usual, I'm working in like 4 things, which for me is very like new. Because like back home, my mom was very insistent on like, I don't want you to do any work because I want to be the one to support you. But now I have to do work to support her and my brothers back at home. So it's just like, I'm very busy. And it's so hard to bring that up in conversations. And when I say I'm tired, people just assume it's because of schoolwork. No, there's so much else to navigate. And you can't really talk about it. Like, your thing is a very different experience and a different perspective, because how people treat dining custodians here is horrible, terrible, no good, disrespectful, gross. Tomatoes. But yeah, stuff like that. They're just, you always get this weird looks when you're like, how much do you work? And then you're like, this is how much I work. And they're like, really? Why do you do that? And it's like, for a reason. I'm not in the business of telling people like, I'm doing this because of this, and like parents and like my family and this. Only specific people need to know that. So when you don't justify it, then you get the weird looks. But I don't feel the need to justify it to you. This is how I'm existing in this space, and it's new to you, but just deal with it and swallow it, and you'll be okay. Even though you haven't seen that before, you'll be fine. So yeah, I definitely understand that. And then you have that, and how you take up space in this institution is very vastly different than anyone else, because of these uniquely like different aspects of your personality that make it hard to take up space. But there's no foundation or anything for that. It's just like, okay, you are like the same mode as every other student, when that's not true. It's still like, are you serious with me right now? Of course you know it's different. So I definitely agree with you on that. My frustration is a lot internal, so I don't have a lot of words for it. So I'm just like, girl, okay. I'm like shaking my feet right now.
No, I understand. I just, I don't know. I guess on that note, like, I'm cognizant of our time. That I've been here for a while, so
I was about to say people are outside the door trying to get in. They're knocking.
Yeah. So I guess just to end on a more like positive note. Okay. Not that all this isn't warranted, but also I do want to give our little like fly babies who are listening out there in the world something to hold on to. And so whenever you say like each of us having a unique experience, I would say just like, don't compromise to like fit the mold or like the image that's been sold to you. Because there are ways that I get around it. In the past, for me, it's always been, the solution has always been, oh, why don't you just work less hours? Is that gonna make me feel better? Are you kidding? This is like where I come from. This is what I do. And so it's like whatever sort of combination of things. This semester I'm teaching SAT prep, working with dining, taking 5 classes, all classes that I feel really passionate about. These are things that's like, I'm not, sometimes people get so mad at me, they think I say all this stuff like I'm bragging. It's like, it's like, no. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I need money. Like, what is, God. Sorry, like, I don't, there are some things that I'm not willing to compromise on. And so it's kind of not great news because I'm kind of saying you always have to be in a space to negotiate. But it's true, but negotiate on your terms, not on anyone else's. So whatever, you know, you need to do. For me, it's been sort of like finding community here in like the activities that I engage myself in, as well as the people that I am in community with constantly, from my dining services coworkers to some of the faculty that have been there for me since day one, to, you know, you, to other friends on campus. And so that's sort of what I have to share. Do you have anything that you would like to say lastly?
I definitely agree with you in the sense of like, you don't have to fit yourself into the mold in order to feel like you've done the Amherst thing, you're an Amherst student. There is going to be a lot of negotiating in the sense of how you fit into spaces, but once you do it on your own terms, that's it. A shift happens. And even if it's a sense of misalignment, once again, using the puzzle piece metaphor, it becomes something that's yours. It's not them placing it in the wrong way for you. You're sort of going against the grain. I think also as well, in that comes with finding your place, finding your community, finding your group that understands and that sees you. Because there's certain people that will not see you depending on where you slot yourself. And that becomes an issue because what if I want to complain about how many hours I'm working even though I still want to work those hours? Only certain people understand that without telling you quit a job. That's not what I need to hear. I just want to complain. And stuff like that. So I think like fitting yourself in a place where you are understood, where people see you and they can laugh with you about things. They can like support your ranting and also rant back instead of always offering solutions. So sometimes you need solutions, but sometimes you just want to say, God, I'm so tired. And you're like, I'm so tired too. Like, it's not to say that you should find people where you're just like struggling with. That's not what I'm going for. Just find people who you can talk to. Have those like sit on the floor conversations. They're having this in the form of a podcast, but like those conversations where you can just be like, I see you. What are we going to do? How are we going to talk about it? How are we going to somehow feel better by talking about it? Stuff like that. And you can find that people, you can find that professors, places. Like, I love this breast room. This is my place to just be like, oh gosh.
Sponsored by the breast room.
Yes, it is sponsored by the breast room, and stuff like that. And so those things are not always going to be this ideal utopia. That's not ever going to be true, as sad that as that is. But you can make things okay for you, and that's like something to hold on to always. And that's what I'm also figuring out, because there's so many more years to go. It's fine.
We ain't done yet.
Yeah. And financial aid will feel my wrath one day. It'll happen.
Yeah.
Like college board is already going down, so financial aid is next.
Yeah.
So have those
Alright.
spaces as well. Yes.
Thank you. That was great.
Yeah.
So of course, I know we only brushed the surface on a lot of this stuff.
Yes.
But this is also my first time doing this, so thank you so much for being so willing to speak with me about this. It was really like so valuable. There's things that I learned about you that I didn't even know before. So I appreciate
the Mel
you
lore.
being willing to share with the world. And yeah, in terms of the audience, which we will eventually have.
Yes, we will.
We will be diving into more of these topics over time. Hopefully, we will have Mel visit us again.
I will come back. You hear me in the background of every single podcast. Yes. I agree.
But yeah, that is all. Then
okay. See you later, alligators. Bye-bye.